I don't think anyone's really rejoicing. Um, Far too late, too little. Bibi is not bothered. He's, if you look at the track record of the ICC, Putin, as an example, he's got an arrest warrant on war crimes done in Ukraine, and he visited a ICC member country who are obliged to arrest, those with the warrant. And I can't remember which country it was. It was an African country. But instead of arresting Putin, they rolled out the red carpet. So who will actually go ahead and arrest Bibi and Gallant? I can't see anyone doing that. The justice is far from being achieved here, right? And though this ICC would like to think that it's giving some sort of semblance or an argument to a case of using acts of, acts to deprive people of food, cause starvation, genocidal acts in war, which are forbidden. They're thinking they're going to get this. They're going to get them, but I think no one that I've met or seen or read about are rejoicing that actually this is happening. They're not even relieved, that this is happening. It'll be interesting to see. I think this will actually put more pressure on some of the surrounding countries of the Israeli state. The likes of Sisi. Why did you coordinate with this person? The Abdullah, King of Jordan. Why were you supporting these guys from their own people? Because their own people are the only place I can see that you can get some sense of justice from. They're the only people that will
Who might push for it.
who are going to who genuinely want something done about this situation.
Yeah, I
as
think-
well as getting justice, as well as reversing what's happened, as well as rebuilding Gaza. They will take it all the way to bring a smile back to the mother's face who's lost everything.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times what you're getting is you're getting the subjects of a country who are wanting one thing, but the leaders of the country who are doing something else, but pretending they are sympathetic to their subjects or their countrymen's sentiments. This is an issue because the likes of King Abdullah, you can see him making Hollywood-style movies in the aeroplane, throwing out aid just to appease his audience. But at the same time, we know what he's doing in the on the other side, being labeled as a close ally of the Israeli regime, according to Israel themselves, and it's been announced. Which is why then you've got the likes of the Muslim Brotherhood over there, who are a threat to King Abdullah and the likes, because they see that actually they have the ability to topple our regime and our leadership in these countries. Do you see what I mean? So then you've got countries like ours in the UK who shamefully, Keir Starmer, I won't call him sir, well, he can have his sirship, doesn't mean anything to me, and I don't admire it and I don't give it any respect. But he has been on record, even in Parliament just recently, saying, I have not said that Israel is committing a genocide, and I will not say it. Basically saying that, look, it doesn't matter what's happening. But on the other hand, they're saying, well, we'll uphold the international law, and that has its place and it has its respect. Interesting thing now will be to see how the UK responds and how the European countries respond, because I think there's an interesting dynamic here as well. I think the European countries are a little bit different to the US in how they will respond to the ICC's judgment, or not judgment, and the issuing of the arrest warrants. I think they have a different thing and a different feeling towards the ICC and the ICJ than the US does. Now, 20th of January, I think Trump comes in power. I reckon he's going to be at loggerheads with the ICC anyway. US have already declared, what's that woman's name? I can't even remember her name. Mrs., they call her the Miss Veto. there's two people from America who sit in the UN and always veto
Oh, yeah.
to have, the woman, she was in an interview, she even made it clear to say that we don't accept anything in action against Netanyahu. If a warrant is issued, we won't arrest him. We'll make it clear we won't be arresting him. In fact, even whilst Israel has been, the ICJ, wasn't it, who had said that there's a plausible genocide, right? Or is it the ICC? Any international court says it's plausible that there's a genocide happening, yet these guys welcome Bibi into their country, the US. He gets the red carpet for him.
He spoke in Congress.
And he spoke in Congress. He addressed and he got a standing ovation.
Multiple times.
What does that tell you about this?
I think your point, Majid, my view is that whether Keir Starmer calls it a genocide or not, who gives a damn?
Yeah, it's true.
You look at their response now, to be honest with you, that I think the whole world has realised it's like a broken record.
Yeah.
You look at Netanyahu's response to this ICC ruling. He said the chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, he said, look, this is disgraceful, it's anti-Semitic. That same old anti-Semitic card. And I think the whole world, Muslim, non-Muslim, whoever you are, anyone with half a brain has realised anytime they don't want to own up to their crimes and have a real discussion, they try to slap the anti-Semitic card. What was America's response was that, look, Israel has the right to defend itself against Hamas. Come on, stop it.
Yeah.
That's a broken record.
Yeah, exactly.
So for me, whether it's Starmer, whether it's America, whether it's Netanyahu, we don't give a damn what they say. And to be honest with you, Netanyahu's response was, I don't even recognize the ICC, so I don't think he gives a damn what the ICC say. But I think an interesting discussion for me is that the arrest warrants were issued a long time ago. And for me, the arrest warrants was the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when the occupation happened. That this is an obligation upon anyone sane Muslim around the world, and now we see even non-Muslims who are sane have recognized this, to actually, whatever is in their power, to stop this and to do the real prosecution, not just lip service. And I think the people have realized that now. And for me, that's the point where actually, who is going to serve justice? How is this going to stop? Who's really going to give the true arrest warrants? And for me, that's the Ummah. That's the people, because they've spoken up. We've globally, it's a global opinion, it's a genocide. It's a global opinion that need to be removed. This Zionist entity who's committing these horrific crimes. You can't watch those videos. It's getting worse and worse.
Just when you think it couldn't get worse,
that's right.
It is getting worse.
It is, and it's so bad, man. Every day what you see, it's so bad.
I was talking to someone earlier today, and they were saying, well, why didn't this happen earlier? Is it not that obvious? Isn't it obvious what's happening here? And it just made me think that, if the legal structure and the legal system in the world, whether it's the International Court of Justice and ICC, the European countries, Americas, it's broken. It doesn't do anything anywhere close to what it's supposed to be doing. If you had a robust system, like the Islamic systems that we have, people would be accountable just like that.
Yeah.
You would not have to lose 45,000 lives before you can even issue an arrest warrant, which will seem like just a gesture, which won't have the power they think they're selling us on. I don't think. I mean, there are people who have higher hopes. I guess we should have hopes, but there are people who see this as more of a positive. I was having this discussion on LinkedIn earlier today, and somebody said, it made me think a little bit. They said, it's better than the decision not to arrest them, isn't it?
I think what the point being is, and that's my point, that, I wouldn't even go into a debate where, okay, are the people right or wrong for saying that it's a good thing or a bad thing. The Ummah and people out there, Muslim, non-Muslims are at that point where you can't look at these images anymore. You can't even believe it's happening.
Yeah.
And any hope of it stopping, anyone with some sort of authority saying it needs to stop, they're clinging onto it, which I don't have a problem with. But for me now, as the people are waking up, well, actually, how is this going to stop?
You know, interestingly, just yesterday, there was a resolution being discussed in the UN, another one to bring everything to a halt for a ceasefire, unconditional ceasefire. And guess what?
Someone vetoed it.
Guess who? No surprises. The US. And you should have heard the Palestinian delegates' really emotional speech after that. Really trying to highlight, do you not see us as human beings? That's a real question. One thing this conflict, if you can call it even a conflict, let's just for the sake of argument call it one, even though it's not the way I see it.
Yeah, genocide. Yeah,
It is a
you shouldn't even
genocide.
call it a conflict.
Yeah.
Yes.
One thing this genocide has highlighted is that the Western world, in particular, the colonial inclined people, those countries who are inclined towards colonialism through their history, the brutal, bloody history, have never seen people who are not like them as equal to them, irrespective of all this spiel about equal rights, all this spiel about human rights, all this spiel about dignity and equality. It means nothing.
And just on that point, Majid, the point is that anything that's not benefited them politically, materially, they can't give a damn about human beings.
100%.
Whether it's the old lady who's dying and they cut her cold fuel allowance, or it's Muslims across the globe. Wherever politically it benefits them or materially, they're willing to ignore human life. And to be honest, one positive thing out of all of this and is that the whole world has realized, well, actually, whether it's Netanyahu or the Western governments that support him, there's no humanity left in them. They do not have the right to look after human beings because they can never serve justice and they can never take care of any human beings.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you a
Other
question?
than their own. Go on.
All right. You've had this news,
Yeah.
the arrest of Warrant, right? And what happened in Amsterdam? What excited you more, or what did you see amongst the people that you interacted with? What made them more joyful?
I'm not sure I should I should be telling everybody on
No,
on the
but
public
my
platform.
observation was the sentiment was independent. They deserved it. There should be some sort of justice,
Yeah.
and it's got to be on our terms.
Yeah.
Come on, Bobby, that was an anti-Semitic attack.
Yeah.
You know what?
That whole thing, right? What happened in Amsterdam, plus what happened at, I think it was PSG game where they had that massive flag of the Palestinian flag with Masjid al-Aqsa
Yeah.
and these kind of things, right? And the subsequent, Paris match where it was kind of boycotted, and out of solidarity, Macron said, "I'm going to attend," as if it mattered. All of that, I think that whole episode, and what's happening in the African Cup of Nations, I think it is AFCON, the matches in Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, etc., and the stadiums are full with people, supporting Palestine and expressing that love, and you're thinking, you know what, that is what's needed. And I think when you look at what's happening with Russia and North Korea's deal, and right, okay, if someone attacks us, you got to back us. But if someone attacks you, you've got to back us. They've got that deal now. So 10,000 troops of theirs are on the Ukrainian border. And far gone is the argument that, actually, you know what, Pakistan's too far. Where's North Korea?
Yeah.
And where's Ukraine? If you're going to say who's got the closest bond, the North Koreans and the Russians, which don't share a history, really,
Yeah.
or the Ummah of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the brotherhood, whose Aqidah is one, whose Quran is one, whose Prophet is one, whose Allah is one.
Yeah.
And
You know,
just on
just on
Sorry,
that, sorry, there are people actually calling out the Muslims and saying, "Where are you?
Yeah,
Where are you
100%.
for your Muslim brothers and sisters? There's so many of you. Why are you quiet?" There are non-Muslims calling out the Muslims to help them
Yeah.
stop the genocide happening, right? And it's mind-boggling, isn't it? Like you're not supposed to be in that position where you get called out, but there's so many of them
You
who
see,
have fallen.
all these points, this arrest warrant, the North Korea scenario, it just adds more and more pressure to these countries. What are you doing? What are you doing? And no one's blind to this.
Yeah.
No one is blind to this. Then you add to this, oh my days, Riyadh season's kicking off.
Yeah.
J-Lo, she's there half naked, dancing around the model of the Kaaba. And you're thinking, Astaghfirullah Azim. So when you've got that situation going on and the mockery right to the stabbing right into the heart of the believer in that situation, you're like thinking, right, okay, there's going to be something that's going to have to flip. There's some switch that's going to have to switch. And that is the moment I think the world's anxiously waiting for and observing and because you can't insult the people forever and you can't make a mockery of them forever. You can't, like, they can see everything going on. And Saudi Arabia, instead of being a land of the message of Islam, it's become the land of contradictions, just like the Western world is. Full land of contradictions. Human rights, and we started off the discussion on ICC and the arrest warrant. Britain is one of the founding members of the ICC. The discussion today should have been on actually Keir Starmer. If Bibi was to come to London, would you arrest him? That should have been the discussion. But they're so in bed with them. They're not prepared to have that discussion.
I think on Bobby's point as well, Manji, that look, the issue whether it was Amsterdam, that the Ummah has responded with whatever's in his power, whether it's demonstrations, whether it's fundraising, whether it's speaking out, whether it's sharing things on social media. And we saw that in Amsterdam. You can't go around bullying people, insulting them, physically attacking them, and think you're not going to get a slap back in the face. And this is what happened in Amsterdam, wasn't it? And now the point being is, who's going to give that response to Netanyahu, to Israel? And the world has realized, well, actually, whether it's the Western leaders that support him or the Muslim rulers, they're not going to do anything. They've proven that. And the people have even stopped asking them and stopped even looking at them for hope. And Bobby's point is that we can see this, whether it's Riyadh, what's going on, or throughout the world, but actually it's a war, it's a genocide. Physically, who has the power to stop this? We can do whatever's in our means, but the ones who have the physical power are the armies. And the only way this can stop, you can have a break for a short time or whatever, is going to be that physical body, i.e. the armies, who can physically stop this. The ones who have sold out won't, but there's many sincere ones in the armies who can resolve this issue.
I think with Israel itself, it's always had this, whether it's the Dahiya doctrine, or whether it's the one that they use to kill their own so they don't get taken as
Cannibal,
hostages.
is it? No.
The Hannibal directive. Yeah, the cannibals, aren't they, really? The Hannibals. And this is their way of doing things. Smash them hard, and they think that will deter them for the rest of their lives.
They need to be smashed hard
They
themselves.
need to be smashed hard
This-
themselves.
we should be very frank about this.
But this is
isn't
the
it?
thing, isn't it?
And who's going to do that?
But this is it. I mean, I think even when it comes to the situation with Iran, I think, look, if you think about, from an objective point of view, anytime America has created a boogeyman of any country, it's gone and invaded them. It's changed the regime. Regime change has been one of its classic kind of strategies, right? For all these decades, Iran has been created as the boogeyman, even said to have nuclear capabilities. Why, other than some sanctions, has America not done anything more severe? And why has Iran, having been accused of all these supposed crimes or illegal activities, not taken the action which it is being accused of against Israel, even up till now? Up till now, what they've done to Israel has always been in communication with them and their paymasters, the US. I don't take that seriously for some reason. I can't take it seriously. Up till now, there's something else going on. I think America needs Iran to be perceived as the boogeyman. Iran needs Israel. It's like a marriage of a kind, right? It needs Israel to be in the position that it is to gain support in the Middle East for people to sympathize with Iran, people like Hezbollah, people like Hamas, even though there is that Sunni Shia thing going on, but people like the Yemenis in Yemen. And there are a lot of, if you look at the geopolitics here, you've got the Saudis who have a certain amount of influence and the UAE who have their own. But Iran, in having Israel as the boogeyman for them, has created more groups and more sympathizers to make its influence stronger. I think they need each other, and US knows that. Therefore, when Israel has done anything in Iran, it's not done it to Iranians directly as such, to the degree where it's expected to, right? Not because it's scared, because it knows it's, I think Israelis need Iran, Iranians need Israel, and the US is their dad.
Mm-hmm.
It knows it, and is letting them continue. I think there's wool being pulled over our eyes.
Maybe I think for me, anything is not complicated. Meaning that if something happens, I should know, you should know, and the world should know where is my loyalty by my response. My response be that if I feel something, do I break my back by everything I've got in my capability to make a physical change, i.e. as an individual, speaking out, doing certain things to raise my voice, change public opinion. And if you're a nation that's got an army, we can see where your loyalties lies by what's the physical change on the ground.
True.
You've got an army, you've got rockets, you've got things, you've not even kicked out embassies. And that actually, where have you where have you shown a real threat? The Ummah has. The world knows, even America,
what kind of tangible response?
Sees, yes. Where's your tangible results?
Yeah.
And if you've got an army and you've got weaponry, then there should be a very physical, tangible response. And if it was even a threat, this wouldn't go on.
The point that you mentioned about Iran being perceived as, or being promoted, or the pictures being painted as a bogeyman, and there's a marriage of sorts, and this, I think, the Middle East, I think there's a consensus out there that America's grand planning, like they say, is going to be a few of the big countries. They will be responsible for the security of the region, right? Do you remember that incident a few months back, or maybe a month ago, when someone went into an like a factory in Ankara in Turkey, and they kind of shot at some of the workers and what have you, and then Turkey went and hit the PKK area, etc., in Iraq and part of Syria and these things. So they want to make sure that Turkey has got its sphere of influence, Iran has got its sphere of influence, Israel has as well, and Saudi Arabia. They're the four that need to be the balance of power for that area. Just like post-World War II, American thinking for Europe was similar. Britain, the French, and the Germans. The balance of power has to be more or less equal. You can't mix and match these guys. So therefore, it's going to place them. Egypt, I think it wants it to get involved in African affairs. So on the southern border, the Sudanese situation, which is very desperate, get involved in there, get involved in Somalia. That's where it's trying to get its head into. And then once I think it sees that these nations are playing to the rules of the game that we want them to play with, we'll give them funding, we'll give them the weapons that they need, and therefore we have got a bit of headspace and we can move on to the more important things that we need to move on to.
I think
that's the most important just going back onto the gameplay, okay, of America. So,
well, this is an American gameplay. Just like America and Israel say that the likes of Hezbollah and these guys, and you know, they are proxies of Iran.
Yeah.
Israel is a US proxy.
Yeah. So
in the same way.
So in this scenario, like for example, against Russia, so they've done NATO doing. I think it's still going on. They're doing some kind of war games practice. And in the new member state, which is Finland. Now, when Finland joined NATO, it had the longest border crossing to Russia, right? So that gives another area for them to go from the north into Russia. NATO troops can go in. And they're doing war games there at this moment in time. And I think 26 the countries, including Britain, they're all participating. And Russia finds that highly offensive. Like, you're doing that right on our doorstep, you know. Then
which is understandable.
Understandable. So then what happens next is Finland has got a fiber optic cable, data cable that goes into Europe, okay, undersea.
Right.
And this week, the Russians or the Chinese, they've taken over a Chinese ship because they think it's the Chinese that have done it. They went with an anchor, right? One of their cargo ships went by and with the anchor dragged it on the floor and they cut the cable. There's a tit for tat.
Yeah.
The real unfortunate thing with all of this is all the Muslim countries that are involved in this gameplay of America, they're subservient. They're not even reacting back.
Yeah.
And that is the devastating thing. And the people can see this as well. They can see all of this, and people are so up to here with this.
Yeah. The patience is very
That was the point, that simple point, that actually, with all of that, what you went through, Bobby, the point is, who are the Muslim rulers there to serve? Is it the Western nations and their interests, or actually the interests of the Ummah? In Islam, at the end of the day, your Muslim rulers and politics is there actually to serve and look after the affairs of the people. I think the world has realized, the Ummah has realized, well, actually, these rulers are not there to serve, and they've spoken very clearly about this. They are there to serve their puppet masters, and they need to be removed. It's simple, isn't it? Now, and they have been exposed even more by Palestine. The Western rulers, the Muslim rulers, well, actually, we can see who you are there to serve. America and Britain supply the weapons. Which Muslim nation physically who had that capability supplied or supported in any way? It's disgusting. You're dropping food. If an individual sends charity and food and contains, that's their capability.
Yeah.
You've
and
got
done
weaponry.
respect for
Yes. The means you've got to change this and to support them. Look at this. What was the reason the ICC gave, even though we know this is not going to achieve anything, that you starve the people of basic human needs: food, water, electric, all of these things. And you look at that anywhere in the world, under the disguise of this, America and Britain have invaded nations.
Let's have a look at what the ICC actually put out, which is really interesting, actually. I highlighted this because it was something that I felt was encapsulating of the key point. So the chamber therefore found reason... by the way, this is from the International Criminal Court's website itself. So the headlines reads that situation in the state of Palestine. ICC... See, I like the fact that they said the state of Palestine. ICC Pre-Trial Chamber 1 rejects the state of Israel's challenges to jurisdiction and issues warrants of arrest for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. There's no mention of Mohammed Daif as is portrayed in legacy media. So the main key point, obviously, there's so many sections to this. Decisions on request by the State of Israel. Obviously, they try to challenge it and say you don't have jurisdiction. Warrants of arrest. Again, the chamber issued warrants of arrest for two individuals, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu and Mr. Yoav Gallant, for crimes against humanity and war crimes committed from at least 8th October 2023 until at least 20th of May 2024, the day the prosecution filed the applications for warrants of arrest. So this was interesting here. The chamber also found reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Netanyahu and Gallant each bear criminal responsibility as civilian superiors for the war crime of intentionally directing an attack against the civilian population. This was important. The chamber therefore found reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant bear criminal responsibility for the war crime of starvation as a method of warfare. Somebody asked me, why not all the other stuff? Why just the starvation element? I think, given how the complexities of how the legal thing works at times, you've got to find the element which is least likely to be challenged effectively with evidence. And I think this is an area, the starvation element, which they can't justify. If you say, what about blowing up residential buildings and hospitals? Well, they can say, oh, well, Hamas is there. Everything's Hamas for them, right? So the chamber found that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the lack of food, water, electricity, and fuel, and specific medical supplies created conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of part of the civilian population in Gaza, which resulted in the death of civilians, including children, due to malnutrition and dehydration. So this is what the basis of these warrants is. Not all the other stuff, which, again, the genocide stuff, that's something different. This is what the warrant was issued for. So there's obviously they're going into the background and stuff like that. So just like you were mentioning, Barry, these things are obvious to see. In an effective legal system, you wouldn't see 45,000 people having died before a warrant was issued, an arrest warrant was issued. You would get the parties straight away.
You know, this is still a live situation.
Yeah.
Netanyahu is still in charge.
Yeah.
Donald Trump has appointed an ambassador, Mike Huckabee, and a Christian, pro-Zionist, who wants to annex the West Bank for Israel.
He doesn't even call it the West Bank.
Yeah.
He calls it Judea and Samaria using the biblical terms. He says we don't even recognize the West Bank.
So this is the level of the contempt against the ICC, everything, because they're still land grabbing, they're still killing, literally, there's an arrest warrant. Normally when there's an arrest warrant, there's a policeman, there's some sort of authority that's going to see this through. But there's unfortunately going to be nothing. And these guys are persisting in their crimes, in their oppression, and they claim to be peace-loving people at the end of the day. What's the legacy media talked about today? Just how can a democracy who's defending itself be, accused of this? These people are, this ICC court is actually designed for banana republics. It's not designed for democracies. So there's two worlds, and there is a global south, there's the West and what have you. And again, I go back to the way other nations are trying to play the game, and how the leaders of the so-called Ummah at the moment, they're just awash with problems. Like, a few weeks ago there was the BRICS meeting. Brazil, Russia, India, China. They admitted a few more members as well. In that meeting, they announced an alternative pay mechanism to pay without dollars between the different countries. So if you've got 2-3 billion people's population's trade being dealt with without dollars, that's going to be a harmful blow. It's called BRICS pay. Now, when you think about that, you're like thinking, hang on, and Putin announced it. And you're thinking, hang on, these guys are thinking creatively of how they're going to get one better, how to advance.
Yeah.
And the base of their technology is blockchains on how they're going to transport the money and all this. So what's my point of saying this? Why did the Riyadh season kick off? It all stems from, yes, liberalization of the country, but also there's economics. They honestly believe that by having a music industry is going to diversify their economy. Having a sporting section as industry, it will diversify. Sports in the UK brings in an estimated 60 billion to the UK economy. The music industry is roughly about 30 billion. So when you look at the figures and you think, okay, Saudi Arabia is thinking, I could get a piece of this. That's the way these guys think. And you're thinking, hang on, is that your level of thinking? Is that your level of thinking? Is this the best you can offer us?
Do not open the can of worms about Saudi. I think that's a separate podcast on its own.
Yeah, I think we could
and their
do,
crimes and recently what they've done with the Riyadh Festival is absolutely disgusting. But I think this is
I think we'll do another
separate,
podcast on
definitely
this, another discussion on this, because a lot of people understand that. Look, for us as Muslims particularly, we see that land as a sacred land because of the prophetic connection, the religious connection, and it's the land of Tawheed in terms of our direction to prayer is in Mecca, right? There are certain things throughout history which have remained pure there, or at least there's been an attempt to keep them pure. Obviously, a lot has changed in the last 100 years, and throughout the last 100 years, there have been changes which have not necessarily been for the better. Some have been for the pilgrims, some not so. These are a lot of things to discuss when it comes to the Saudi issue. But right now, there are also, if you look carefully, there are, you know what, I'm not going to mention it. I'm going to wait for the podcast because there's some really enlightening and some interesting stuff when you look into the Saudi dynasty and where it comes from. But there are lots of interesting.
Like you said, it's a separate
lineage.
podcast, but I think linking to this one, Majid, the important point is whether it's recognizing an illegal, genocidal, I wouldn't even call it a state of Israel.
Occupied Palestine.
That's right. The Ummah of Rasulullah would never do that.
100%. And
we will never forget its
happen.
crimes.
Yeah.
We will issue the arrest warrants and we will wait for the people of power to implement them. Yeah. The ones who have the authority. If they don't, on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask them, according to their power, what did you do? Yeah. And it's upon us to issue these arrest warrants by speaking up, by sharing what's going on, and speak louder and louder.
And I think that's the only thing we can do. Right?
Going back to my first point, linking it to Saudis, that whether it's recognizing the state of Israel or accepting liberalism in our lands, it's one of the last point that was this singer Atif Aslam in Pakistan. We can say that whether we're practicing or not, the Ummah of Rasulullah has its red lines. Yeah. He was called to this Riyadh festival. What did he say? He said, for me, the land is sacred. No matter what I do, I'm not going to do it there. Because there's still a red line. We have certain affiliation to that land.
I didn't know that. Know that. Wow.
And so my point being is whether it's recognizing an illegal entity, the Ummah has, with the Ummah of Rasul, we have certain red lines. Or whether it's accepting liberalism, some people we might fall into sin. We're insan, we're human beings. We'll have ups and downs. But we will not accept or recognize these liberal values. And I think that's something the world should recognize.
I think there's also... it's important to define what we mean by those liberal values, because the obvious comparison people usually would make is liberals versus conservative values, But what does liberal actually mean? I think we understand it because we know each other. What I know what you're referring to. I think generally, it's going beyond what our moral and ethical codes from our religious perspective.
It's a big discussion, but but beyond that is that, look, the liberal values and capitalist values are that a materialistic benefit will come before and your personal benefit and political interest will become before human life, what the atrocities are going on in Gaza, you'll ignore that. You won't do something about it. Whereas we know in Islam, and this is also something I don't think we're doing loud enough, now the world has realized that actually these political governments, the rulers have failed. Comparing liberal values now to the Islamic values, look at the time when Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, always give these examples with the companions, and one of them picked up a baby chick from the nest. And what did Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam say? Go back and put it back, because imagine how the mother would feel. That we cared for the feelings. Do we not know in the time of Muhammad how if the donkey fell on the road, we would be accountable? The animals we cared about, let alone human beings.
Yeah, a dog,
that's the difference.
If a dog didn't get water,
right.
Yeah,
that's the difference between liberal values and actually Islamic values when it comes to politics.
Yeah, because the liberal values is all about me.
That's right.
It's the me factor, isn't it?
Right.
We will. Did you want to add something there?
I was just going to say, simply put, the land of Tawheed, essentially, what we're talking about is the submission of the heart and mind to the will of Allah.
Yeah.
And liberalism is the freeing of the heart and the mind from Allah.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually.
And that's why I say Saudi has become the land of contradictions, just like the Western world. It's just become the land of
He
contradictions.
just wants to keep going back to that, doesn't he, and do some Saudi bashing, but we'll come to that.
We'll come to that.
We'll
Right,
come
lads,
to that.
I think we should call it a night for today. I think it was important to discuss this. It's breaking news. It happened today. People are going to be reacting and responding in different ways. Some people will be hopeful, which is good. We should always have hope. We should live in hope. Some people will be realists. Some people will be pessimists. So whichever camp you're in, it'll be interesting to see how this all plans out. But as you've seen from, for historically what's happened over the last year and 4 months, year and 4 weeks, these things have a habit of working out in a way that is almost pre-orchestrated. And the those who pull the strings are obvious now, right? And if it's not become obvious to you within the last year, then you really must be living under a rock somewhere. So it's the average person like you and me who may raise their voice, raise awareness, and hopefully create the waves or be a small drop in that wave that creates some kind of a change, inshallah. On that note, we'll say good night, and inshallah, we'll see you at the next one.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.